Hey guys, welcome to Digital Srini channel on YouTube. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, well, I feel bad for you because you missed out on a lot of stuff. But luckily, they are all on my channel. It's not too late. Hit the subscribe button right now. Okay, let's get to the point here. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about global average pooling layer as it relates to deep learning. Why am I doing this? Because this lays foundation for us to talk about anomaly detection, especially to localize any features that help our deep learning model to classify a given image as an anomaly. So if you ever wonder, okay, you have your if you have your normal images and then you have your anomaly, why did my model call this anomaly and then show me the regions where this anomaly is happening? This can be very useful if you have some sort of an engineered let's say an image of an engineered block, let's say, and it's supposed to look one way, but then some anomaly is going on. And then you want to classify that as an anomaly. And where is that anomaly going on? So this can be a great way. And as you can see on the screen here, you see that, okay, there are a couple of things going on. How do I highlight those two features right there, on my feature map? So I can go back and say, oh yeah, that's exactly where these anomalies are localized. Yeah. So to localize this, the global average pooling can be very, very helpful. But it is very simple. What is global average pooling? As you can see on the screen, if you have a whole bunch of images, for each image, which is nothing but a bunch of pixel values, it just takes an average and gives you one single value. So to understand this further, let's go ahead and jump into our code and look at, in fact, use the same numbers and put that into an array. And then just look at max pooling, which I'm pretty sure you know what it is, average pooling, global average pooling, and also a quick run through this exercise of just showing these highlighted regions. But I'll save the process of actually going through line by line to get anomaly localization for the next video. So please subscribe and come back for the next video the next week. But let's jump into the code to understand global average pooling. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to import these layers: convolution, activation, max pooling. And from layers, I'm also importing dense layer right there. And more importantly, global average pooling 2D. This is exactly what the video is all about. And also I'll get average pooling 2D so you can see exactly what the difference is. And I'm also importing max pooling 2D right there, which is what we normally use. And I'm pretty sure you're aware of that. So let's go ahead and import these libraries. And then I'm importing OS and OpenCV, Pillow, NumPy, and Matplotlib like we normally do in most cases. So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's define our image. Well, this is not a large image. This is just a 4x4 pixel array. So let's go ahead and define this. This is pretty much the same type of array I showed you on the welcome screen or the intro screen. Now, okay, I just want to make sure it says array of float 64. I just put a decimal point right there to make sure it reads this as a float 64 array. Otherwise, when you do this math, it's going to return only integers, and then it's not a true comparison. So that's fine point. Okay, so we have our image, which is basically 47311523 and these values. So now let's go through the exercise of just looking at max pooling and average pooling and global average pooling. So first of all, let's define our input image as this image, but we need to expand the dimensions, right? So the input to any of our layers in Keras is a 4-dimensional array. Okay, usually the channels last, and the first one is number of images. So that's exactly why I'm adding an axis here, Our actual data is somewhere, I don't know why I did that. Our actual data is in between right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and define our input image, and you should see our input image is basically the same array, except now it's of a shape of 1x4x4x1. Okay, so now let's go ahead and apply max pool. I'm going to share this file with you with all the text right there so you can read it at your own leisure. But max pooling here, we are going to use a pool size of 2x2. What does max pooling do? So it applies a kernel size of 2x2 or window size of 2 by 2, and within that 2 by 2 window, it's going to look for what is the maximum value. So we can guess that, right? So if you apply a 2 by 2 grid on top of this, it should be what? 7 is the maximum within that 2 by 2. And our stride is going to be 2 here, so it goes to the next block, 3, 1, 2, 3. The value here is 3. Well, let's look at the output. So my max pool equals to, I'm defining my max pool as max pooling 2D with a pool size of 2 by 2. Apply that onto your input image, right? So let's go ahead and do that. And the output of this is going to be a tensor. We need to convert that tensor into a NumPy array. You see up here, it says it's a tensor object. So let's convert that into a NumPy array. It's just .numpy. And let us go ahead and print the max pool shape. What is the output shape? 1, 2 by 2, 1. Our input shape was 1, 4, 4, 1. So as you can see, max pooling is commonly used during the downsampling part of an encoder. And very similarly, you have an upsampling operation, but let's not discuss about that for now. As you can see, it decreased our image size into 2 by 2. We started off with 4 by 4. Obviously, it makes sense because we are applying a 2 by 2 right there. Okay, let's go ahead and print our max pooler and compare the values. So it's 7, 3, 6, 9. Does it make sense? Yeah. Here, 7 is the maximum within that grid. Within this grid, 3 is the maximum value. Within this grid, 6 is the maximum value. And within this grid, 9 is the maximum value. So max pixel is very intuitive, as you can see. And I also added some notes about, okay, it's commonly used in deep learning during the downsampling, as I already mentioned. And it's commonly used because we assume that our objects of interest likely produce large values. So we want to take only the large values, and then we can continue that. So max pooling is commonly used. I don't know what I was doing when compared to average or other pooling, which means there is something called average pooling. Although we use max pooling quite a bit, there is something called average pooling 2D, exactly similar implementation as max pooling. And let's do pretty much the same operations and print out the shape of the output here. Also, the shape is 1 by 2 by 2 by 1. It's applying the same pooling size, except instead of extracting the maximum value, it's just averaging the value within that window. So here you got decimal points, 4.25, 2.25. Does it make sense? What is the average of 7, 4, 1, and 5? It's 8, 12, 17. 17 divided by 4, apparently that's 4.25, right? And then here you get 2.25. The average of these is 4. 6 plus 6, 12. 15, 16 divided by 4. Yeah, 4 right there. So you can see it's taking average within the individual blocks. Nothing more to discuss there. Now let's get to the average, global average pooling. So it averages an entire image instead of over a patch. You see here for global average pooling, I do not have a pool size because it's actually averaging every pixel or every value within that entire image. So you get only a single value and not a tensor or a vector. Okay, when you do this. And when you do your global average pooling. And instead of downsampling, instead of reading this, let me just give you a quick summary. This is commonly used to substitute flatten, in your dense layers, like from your convolutional layers. When you want to go to dense layers, you flatten it and then you go to dense layers. Global average pooling can be actually used to instead of that. So that's one common use, and it converts each feature map into a single number, like I just mentioned. The reason why this gives us a good summary of the feature map is that, first of all, our feature maps are all collapsed into a single number. And since feature maps learn about objects in the image, the global average pooling output can be used to map the presence of that specific image. For example, if you have multi-class, if you have 1,000 classes, like a dog and a cat and a whole bunch of things, and if your image has a dog, you can use global average pooling to actually locate exactly where the dog is in a given image. And we'll do that in the next or the next video after the next video, in case you're curious about multi-class localization of these objects. But this is the reason why global average pooling is giving us the location information, which is gone when you flatten it. So let's go ahead and apply this and look at the shape and also look at the value. So The shape is 1 by 1 because you only have one. The shape is gone. You only have one value for this entire thing. And what is that value? 3.9375. In fact, if you just go to my image and mean, my image is nothing but our values right there. And if you just calculate the mean, it's basically 3.9375. So think of this as the mean for each image in your input. So if you have or input to that layer, by the way, that's what I meant to say. So if you have 64 feature maps, and if you apply global average pooling, and each feature map is of size, let's say 256 by 256, but you have 64 of them. And when you apply global average pooling, you get a vector of size 64, each representing the average of a given image or a given feature map. I hope that makes sense. So that's what global average pooling is. And now let me just quickly go through this. I'm not going to explain a lot of things. Here I have, again, the same type of images as I had before. So here, uninfected, 500 images that look like these. And then I have 500 images that look like these, parasitic. I'm loading them, applying a label. I'm just creating a binary classifier, by the way. All I'm doing is binary classifier for anomaly detection, and let us get everything ready right there. There's a reason why I'm not going through this line by line, because I want to save that for next week. So I'm defining a model, that's average pool model. Again, here is my layer right there. So this is just convolution, and then instead of flatten, I replace that with my global average pooling layer, which gives 64 vectors, I believe. Let's go ahead and print it out and study this model. And I'm using binary cross entropy. Okay, there you go. So I start off with 256 by 256 images, and the next layer I get 254 by 254 by 32 because we have 32 filters, and the next one also 32 filters right there. And eventually what we have is a 64 feature maps of size 60 by 60 up to that point, up to that convolution layer. After that, we apply global average pooling, which means this 60 by 60 doesn't matter because it averaged out all these 3,600 values and gave us just one single value per image. So we only have 64 right there. And then we just connect those to our dense layer and get an output right there. And you can apply an activation. In this case, we applied a sigmoid activation. So after that, I trained this model. Okay. And let's go ahead and do that. Why not? This is pretty fast. So let's train this for 30 epochs. And then I'm just plotting my loss curves, and I'm calculating my accuracy. And then I apply a threshold to convert this into some sort of a binary classification. And of course, I'm going to plot the heat map, and I'm going to show this in a second. So let's go ahead and pause this for a second until this is done, and then let's continue. Okay, so there you go, all 30 epochs done, and we're getting about an accuracy of 73% validation accuracy. That's okay. So let's go down, and this part I already mentioned, we already know it should be 73% right there, accuracy. And I am going to show you the confusion matrix just to make sure. Yeah, there is a whole bunch of images that are misclassified right there. Again, let's not worry about any of that right now. Let's only focus on what we are trying to achieve here. So let me go ahead, and I am going to explain all of this in the next tutorial, but I just want to make sure you understand that, hey, in this case, you see, let's load another image. Find a good image. Let's go ahead and first find a good image. Okay, that's a decent image. We see some parasitic stuff going on right there. What happens if we go ahead and plot our heat map that we're going to discuss in the next video? There you go. You see how it's highlighting where these regions are. So let's do a more methodical approach in the next video, where we actually focus on identifying these areas and then putting boxes around them and giving us the coordinates of where the anomalies are within a given image. So now we are not talking about just is this image an anomaly or not. We are talking about yes, this is an anomaly image, but show me where the anomalies lie within that specific image. So please stay tuned for the next video, and I really hope you found this to be useful, and hit the like button if you like it. Thank you guys. Let's meet next week.